Hey, welcome back, everybody, to Backtrekking, the podcast where we look back at the real-world inspirations behind classic episodes of Star Trek. I'm one of your hosts, Caliban, and I always launch a flare before entering the Steel Fortress. And I'm joined on this episode by my co-host.
I'm gooey, and I shot my eye out. I don't know if you heard that one before.
We've returned to explore the stories behind your favorite Trek shows, and today we're here to wrap up 2021 with two tales of the holidays, a family, and how we are shaped by the lives around us and the ones that came before us. It's the 1983 cult holiday classic, A Christmas Story, and the Voyager episode, 1159.
Yep, it's the reason for the season.
And this one kind of straddles two holidays, because it's Christmas, of course, but we also want to talk about New Year's as well, and our show lands right in between those.
Yeah, we nailed it. We nailed the timing.
I think we nailed it perfectly. Yeah. And nobody wants it. Doesn't matter like how entertaining it is or how warm it is. Like the second speaking of 11:59, when 12:01 on December 26th happens, nobody wants to hear anything about Christmas or Santa. Get that crap out of there. It's over for another year.
Yeah, I think right now you can still be like, okay, let's think about Christmas, but you got a good episodes. A few days with this episode.
Hopefully we've got that. I was in a theatrical version of A Christmas Carol for a major theater in the town where I live, and we do a lot of shows. We do sometimes 3 shows a day during the holiday season, and then we would also do it after December 25th, because whenever December 25th lands, you've still got, you've got a union company of actors who are going to do X amount of weekends. And so we'd be doing it almost up to the 1st of January. And those shows felt different somehow. You go out there and you'd be like, yeah, Christmas, and crackers, and
your heart's not in
sugar plum fairies. Yeah.
You're kind of a Scrooge on stage.
But for some people, it's a very popular show and it's always sold out. So for some people, that's the only they'd have to settle for December 26th, I guess. So we'd still go out there and do what was required of us, but it hits a little different.
I think Christmas should start Christmas Eve and go until like New Year's Eve, and then it's New Year's Eve.
Well, that's what Kwanzaa has the right idea, because Kwanzaa sort of takes up that week after Christmas, going to the New Year.
Yeah, good strategy. Because right now I had to go back to work today, and I was like, this sucks.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So if you want to keep your holiday traditions going past the 25th, look into Kwanzaa.
If it'll get me off work, sure.
Let's talk really fast about some of the news that's happening in the world of Trek. And I don't know if you heard, I hope you have heard, because it's important to what we do here, that the shows, the Star Trek series that you think of, the 5 big Star Trek series, TOS to Enterprise, will all be leaving Amazon Prime streaming at the first of the year.
I have, yeah. I don't know. It's continuing that slow kind of trickle off of all these different services. So
it's not trickling down or up. It's kind of trickling sideways to Paramount Plus.
Yeah.
But they are looking to consolidate for obvious reasons, all their Trek offerings. And so it remains to be seen what will happen with this. It remains to be seen what will happen in the industry as a whole, these kind of walled gardens that all these rights holders have set up. It was always heading this way. The wild woolly west of Netflix, or being able to find something on Tubi or something like that, is dying, right, just like the Old West died in American history. And so what happens next? I don't know. Hopefully, Star Trek will continue to succeed. And if it does, Paramount Plus, I'm sure, will be around for a while. But maybe people will respond, negatively to this, and they will want something more. Maybe the expense and hassle of running your own streaming offering will be too much, and companies will once again look towards just offering to license them to other platforms. Of course, that means that Amazon's hegemony will continue. So there's no way to win, really. You're going to be paying some corporation no matter what you do.
That's true. Well, maybe. Might be.
Well, everyone's situation's different, but yeah.
I do. Yeah, I wonder what it'll do for some people, just the viewership of Star Trek, because I know a lot of people who got into Star Trek because it was just there on, Netflix or whatever streaming service, and they were like,
yeah,
I'm going to check this out. Sure, why not? It's there. And now it's like, our new people, no one, like, I don't think anyone knew, unless it's like picking up a random streaming service isn't a big deal for you. But like, it's pretty rare that like I feel like the average person is like, I want to, like, I heard my friend Gooey said TNG is really good. I'm going to sign up for Paramount Plus to check it out. Like, no one's going to do that, I don't think.
Yeah, it's, I've argued both for and against streaming services and appealing to hardcore fans, depending on what show it is. And, I do think that even though there is a desire, and honestly, it's probably a good strategy to try to appeal to many people as possible, I do think that there is a hardcore Star Trek fan base that will always follow them. But, if you put all of your stuff on Paramount, you're asking those people to sign up for Paramount, and they may or they may not. But like you said, you're not going to get any walk-ins that way. You're not going to get any people who are just sort of checking it out if they don't already have that service. And having it on Amazon and or Netflix, which are both essentially the open marketplace of streaming shows, gives you the opportunity to hook people. People who just like you said, from a recommendation for a friend, or it just comes up on their, hey, check this out list on Amazon or on Netflix. You're going to lose that. And I know that it's valuable to them to make money, to have subscribers, and to prove to their shareholders that, they have IP that people are hungry for. But at the same time, like, can't you just, how far could you, what if you took a pay cut? What if you like took less money from Amazon or Netflix to license it, but still kept some kind of footprint or presence on their services so that your things could come up once in a while? I don't know. Maybe we'll see a Star Trek-like show appear on Netflix, or the continuation of one in something like The Expanse on Prime, in order for them to try to counter-program against Star Trek and Paramount.
Yeah, they could do probably a 1-2 punch, too, if they have some other, random old sci-fi show on there or whatever, too. They might be like, oh, we'll make a new one of these or something,
I mean, Hulu was supposed to have the Orville, and I don't think anybody knows what's going on with the Orville right now, but that was kind of their strategy there, I think. So, yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things that you see coming from a long ways away, and now it's here, and I don't know how to feel about it, but that's the new reality, at least for now.
That's that world of streaming that we're all living in. Yep.
And speaking of Paramount Plus, they are having to deal with the fact that they have so many new shows. Discovery is running currently, but this week, the week that we're recording this, Discovery will air its 7th episode and a mid-season finale as the show goes on break to get out of the way of the return of Star Trek Prodigy. So they're already kind of shifting their Thursday night slot in between shows. Prodigy will run for a couple more episodes, and then Picard Season 2 will start up. Or actually, I think Discovery comes back first, and then we'll swap over with Picard. So they're already having to kind of play a shell game with that Thursday night slot.
They never had to really do that before, right? It's been like show ends, another show starts.
Yeah, I mean, like when UPN launched, way back in 95 or whatever it was, they had Voyager on, and then also they had, I think there was a year or two of DS9 that was first run, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And also they had to show reruns of their previous series. So it's it's like growth. It's like I'm growing out of these pants. That's a good problem to have. But I think they need to get a little less precious about that Thursday night time. It's not really night. They just release it on Thursday, 12:01. But let things come out on Tuesday or maybe on Friday or something. It doesn't really matter these days, does it?
I guess not. I mean, I don't know. Maybe people are trained to just think like, the people who want to watch day one are probably thinking like, oh, this is the day that I watch it. But I don't know.
Yeah. I'm in a bunch of groups. Of course, we do our live show. And when they switched from releasing at like 7 p.m. Central, we just kept our show at 7 or 8 and then just didn't, try to stay off the internet the day before as it was out. And of course, the superfans in America stay up late to watch it. People internationally just watch it whenever they get it. And I've seen people like on some of these Facebook groups and things, they're either like immediately talking about it right away, but there are people still who are like, oh, I haven't seen it yet. I'm going to watch it tonight. Or like I always watch all my shows on the weekend. And so they don't even watch it that Thursday. They just wait until Friday or Saturday whenever they're free to watch it. So it's a lot. And, that already existed. Like you said, people are trained for appointment television. I agree. But they're also trained with the birth of the VCR and with DVR to just record it and then like watch it whenever they want to watch it. So since they're doing that anyway, I know you want to kind of control the promotion on social media. You want to control the conversation, but they could just release these whenever.
Right.
Clearly, at this point, they're not comfortable having more than one first-run Star Trek show out.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. But I get, maybe that makes sense though, because none of them are like super in the like mainstream conversation, So maybe they really don't want to risk like, one overshadowing the other when, I don't know, they're not really getting a ton of attention. Like, I don't really see people, other than like people really into Star Trek, talking about Discovery from week to week or whatever.
Yeah, and this wasn't going to be a problem initially with COVID slowing things down, but also with the cartoon show, the Prodigy being on Nickelodeon. Like, it was going to air there and then air later on their streaming service, I guess. But they decided against that and to bring it over to the service. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I've never programmed a TV station before, although I've programmed a podcast network, and I'd imagine that it's difficult for them to know, what the right choice is. But unless millions of dollars are hanging on every decision, I think that Star Trek fans are excited about new shows. I think they're present enough to be able to navigate more than one show at a time.
Yeah, certainly. They probably just too want to keep it spread out so they always have something new coming out. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the whole releasing it all at once is only a Netflix thing still. And who knows if Netflix will change their mind about that. But shows definitely, or networks definitely want to continue to release shows weekly in order to keep the engagement instead of just dropping something, Stranger Things season 3,
right,
and then everybody binges it in a day. And then maybe they don't talk about it on social media for so long after that.
Yeah. Plus, I feel like with Netflix, they're always dropping a different movie or show that like sometimes they can at least people are talking about it. So there's there's something to always engage with. Whereas I feel like Paramount, it's mostly Star Trek. And so they probably want to avoid like you put the season out, someone watches it in 1 week and cancels or whatever. As opposed to you spread it, you can get people to pay for like a few months,
Yeah.
who want to like keep up with it, I guess.
Yeah, and that's also them going from the amazing future world of streaming to snapping back to the kind of broadcast format for a different reason, but still going from like, this is the future, we can have it all, right away, to wait a minute, maybe we want to do it week by week so that people keep talking about it on social media. They have to stay subscribed to our service for X amount of time. So
right,
like everything old is becoming new again, and vice versa.
For better and for worse, I guess.
Yeah. Well, that dovetails, I think, well into our subject for this week's episode. Celebrating the holidays at the end of the year is a tradition that's older than any Christmas story. And from Norman Rockwell to #Merry Litmus, the world has changed and traditions have changed almost untraceably from the 20th century to the 21st. But there remains still for many a romanticized, platonic ideal of what the holidays should be. A snow-covered, Bing Crosby soundtracked Christmas complete with eggnog and candy canes, slippers and robes, and presents on Christmas morning. The reality of our present is that Christmas and Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and good old-fashioned happy holidays are celebrated by everyone as a time of communion with family and being of good cheer, despite the struggles of our modern reality. But it is tempting, though, sometimes to stray back to those olden days of yore, of Santa, of colored lights, and the innocence of finding the perfect present under the tree. That's the world that we're invited into in the 1983 film, A Christmas Story.
In this modern age,
Perfect.
too many people have lost sight of the true meaning of Christmas.
Mom! Hush! Shut up, Ralphie!
So now, in the spirit of the original,
Me to you! Stop!
traditional, American Christmas,
Thanks a lot!
MGM presents A Christmas Story.
dashing through the snow.
Uncle!
In a one-horse open sleigh, o'er the field we go, laughing all the way. Bells on bobtail ring, keep still and smile. What fun it is to ride and sing!
Ho, ho,
This sleigh's on tonight.
Fragile. That must be Italian.
I think that says fragile, honey.
A Christmas Story.
Come on.
The movie that pulls off Santa's beard.
Oh, wow.
And unwraps the secrets
Didn't I get a tie this year?
of the original, traditional,
He looks like a deranged Easter bunny.
100% two-fisted, red-blooded,
It's smiling at me.
all-American Christmas. A Christmas Story.
Yeah, nostalgia.
For me, which is everybody's grade A drug on the street right now is nostalgia. For me, growing up, when I did A Christmas Story was, an attempt by the filmmakers to sell to the next generation, the Christmas of my parents, right?
Right.
But like now, some years, let's not get exact, but X amount of years on, still popular, still loved. I haven't interviewed any 10-year-olds lately, but this is whether or not it was a smart bomb from the boomers, it is good enough of a movie that it just continues to resonate with people who get farther and farther away from the idea of Studebakers and old 1950s Christmas carols and stuff like that. It still works.
Yeah, I mean, part of it's probably the movie, but I feel like it's just got a like really strong marketing behind it too. Like,
being played all day, 24 hours a day on TBS or whatever certainly helps.
right, and like it's just like you go to like half the Christmas decorations you can buy. There's like branded, ornaments and yard signs, and my girlfriend's neighbors had the leg lamp I saw at their house, and so there's just all that. So it's but there, I mean, not to lay it all on just like it's all commercial, but because you also just can't avoid people quoting it and all that stuff. But I feel like it wouldn't be as powerful if it wasn't just always on TV all the time at Christmas.
Yeah, exposure is definitely a big part of it. And I wonder if Gene Shepard ever saw a dime from the leg lamp ornaments or any of the related paraphernalia of the film.
Yeah, I don't know. I've never heard anything about that. So
the film was originally based on Gene Shepard's life. It's a semi-fictional account adapted from his book In God We Trust, All Others Pay Cash. And he's basically like... he's a kind of like troubadour, storyteller guy that I don't think we have so much anymore. Maybe TikTok replaced this or something, but it's just like, let me tell you what happened back in the old day. We had a kid in our neighborhood who could run real fast, and there was a really big dog that lived next door. Stories like that. And it, like I said, it's not exactly his life. He has actually, when he was alive, he came out and said, this is not my life at all. It's totally fictional. But if you look at like aspects of his life, it certainly seems to cleave very closely to it. Mrs. Shields, his teacher, was a teacher that taught him when he was young, and his friends, or the Ralphie's friends in the movie, share some of his real life friends' names. The town that they live in is Homan, Indiana, which is basically an analog of Hammond, Indiana, on the east side of Chicago. And there's a street in Hammond named Homan. So it's like, it all just, why lie? Like, it's your life. It's fine. They're good stories. They're funny.
Yeah. I mean, it does feel like it's not trying to hide that it's like kind of autobiographical, obviously.
The kind of Garrison Keillor kept this kind of thing going for a long time, didn't he? But of course that didn't work out too well.
No.
But I don't know if we have this anymore. I guess if we did, it would be somebody from my generation. So I'm trying to think about like, I can't even think of anybody in my generation who does this sort of thing. Let me tell you this story about the time that I was wearing leg warmers and those slotted sunglasses, but not the Kanye revival ones, the original 1980s ones.
Right, yeah, there's something about it that it's a weird kind of tone. It's pretty interesting, but I don't know. It is very like let's think about the past, I guess. You know what I mean? But some of the humor is not what I expect. Like it kind of didn't fit that tone. I felt like it was very strange. I thought it was going to just be more like, I don't know, like folksy, old-timey humor. But then there was some like really bizarre humor in the movie that kind of took me by surprise, because I don't think I've ever like fully watched it. I've seen like literally every part on TV, but I don't think I've watched it from start to finish. You know?
Okay, so that was my next question for you, just as somebody who, not to have to represent your whole generation, but as somebody from kind of a different generation than me, like what was your exposure to it, and like what did you think about it generally?
I have seen this entire movie. I am so sure of that, because I was watching it. I'm like, I remember this, but I don't remember like actually watching it. I think it's just always on. People are always quoting it, you know. So like, some things is like, yeah, that's how I remember it, and some things I'm like, oh, I just remember this line or like this series of lines. But like the movie as a whole, it was kind of it was sort of what I expected. But like I said, like some of the humor was strange to me. It felt like, I don't know, almost like there was just some like delivery and humor that was sort of like, I don't know, like a Tim and Eric sketch or something. And I couldn't tell, like, is that what they're going for? I don't get it.
That's one of the things that I like the most about the film, because kid sticks his tongue to a pole. You know, it's relatable. Old timey, wholesome stuff. But yeah, the weird things that I'm guessing happen for real, but would make good, freak out sketch comedy type things, like getting the kid to eat the mashed potatoes like a pig or whatever. Just the moms,
right? And they're just losing their
glee
mind
at that. Yeah, I know, everybody's going crazy.
But no one talks about that scene. But it's like the things people quote and like references funny, like don't like are interesting. I guess it's like, oh, that's like a funny little anecdote, but it's not that funny to me. And then the things people don't reference were like the actual funny things, because they were so bizarre.
Yeah, the dogs chasing the dad, and then like when he gets the telegram that he's won this award, and he's so happy, he goes, while he's explaining like the award, he goes over to the front door and sticks his leg out the door, and he's like, "Hey, have a chew on that for free." And then he slams the door again, and then he slams the door and he slams it on the dog's tail. So as he's continuing to talk, you hear this horrible whining, and he's got to go over and let the dog out of the door. Yeah, like those are the bits where somebody, and again, like I haven't read the book, so I'm not familiar with the story, if those are all details from the story, but somebody, Bob Clark is the guy that directed it and co-wrote it, and he did Black Christmas, he did Porky's, he was like this kind of eclectic filmmaker who was a comedy guy as well. And so I think that they definitely must have worked together to put all these bits in here and to add these little bits of character that, for just small parts, like when they go and buy the Christmas tree, the guy that's selling them the Christmas trees, his like specific kind of character where he's just telling them all this bullshit, everything that he thinks that they want to hear about it, just to sell them a little Christmas tree for probably, $2 back in the day.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know. He's this weird, sketchy guy.
Yeah.
I don't know why. I expected it to be more like, I feel like you mentioned Prairie Home Companion or whatever. Like, I feel like that is tonally so like all the bits in that I remember being like, I don't know, like I said, more folksy humor, like it wouldn't connect with someone like more my generation or younger or something. Whereas this, it was like, it was like surprisingly weird in a way that's not. I thought it was going to be all like reverent, like, nostalgia, which it definitely is a lot of. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting in that way. For me, my exposure to this was that, like I said, I mean, it was, I was very young when it came out, but video was kind of coming out then. And so we had it on video. I think it was on TV a lot back in the day as well. And I think it's one of those movies that I had taped off of TV onto VHS. But I'd missed like the first 10 minutes, as you do, because you go, oh, this is on, quick, get a tape. And then because it's like on VHS and it's one of like 4 tapes that you have, I'd watched it over and over and over again to the point where the jokes and punchlines barely made any sense anymore. So it had been a long time since I'd watched it. It still works, like coming back to it and remembering all the bits. It was really great. And then also it was like, my parents they are from this era. They were probably Ralphie's age, when Ralphie was doing his thing. And they don't like movies at all. They don't watch movies, but like they know this movie, like inside and out. Like it definitely worked that, hey, remember back in your day, element of it totally works on them. So it was sort of a point of connection between us.
Yeah.
But this whole thing works. And like also something that is really, I think, at the time unique for it, but has definitely been repeated over and over again now, is the sort of high-handed approach to it. It's true that Gene Shepard, who is the voice of the narrator in this film, he is presenting it in both a rose-colored, glowing way, the good parts, but also in a the warts and all way as well. And what we forget about nostalgia, sometimes we don't look at both the good side and the bad side. But I like that he elevates the material by his sort of erudite narration. He's talking about, his mother says, you'll shoot your eye out. And that's an excuse that's not surmountable by any means known to kiddom. And he's talking about, the jungles of kiddom and all the things they have to go through. And like, that just works against, the images of a kid, eating potatoes,
right.
his mouth. It's like this cool juxtaposition. You get that. This actually directly inspired the Wonder Years. I don't know if you ever watched the Wonder Years when you were younger.
That's what it made me think of too.
Yeah.
And that was, that's also something I felt like was more in that specific lane than even this was. But this was the inspiration,
Yeah, that really took a hard turn into the kind of things that we're talking about. Yeah. But like, just even if you like took out the narration, I think the movie would be poorer for it, but you would still have a film. I mean, you'd still have Peter Billingsley doing his thing. Darren McGavin, who's always been one of my favorite actors, is just really great in this. In a role that is not, he doesn't have a lot of screen time and he doesn't have to do a whole lot, but he's just being the grumpy dad with a heart of gold. And then, of course, Melinda Dillon, who I don't think ever really got enough roles in Hollywood, but she is just really great as the mother, who has a closer, I mean, I guess this is the way you ran the family back then, but like has a closer connection to Ralphie and his brother than the father really does.
Yeah, I think the parents were my favorite kind of characters in the movie in general, because they really did have like, sometimes like with a kid, it's well acted by the children, but sometimes when there is some of that more bizarre humor, you sort of wonder like, what's the kid thinking in this? Whereas I feel like the parents are like, you can kind of tell they're like leaning into it a little bit more.
Oh yeah, the parent actors or the adult actors are great, but I have to give a shout out to the kid actors as well. I think there are a lot of the kids also have a kind of kind of like exaggerated comedy aesthetic to them, and it's something that little Peter Billingsley or the kid that plays Flick or Schwartz, like I don't know if they grew up watching Three Stooges stuff or Groucho Marx stuff, but they were good enough actors to take that direction from older directors and other actors. The part where Ralphie goes insane and just starts beating the shit out of Scott Farkas, the reactions of the kids to that I thought were really good. And like the film knows it because the film goes to those young actors and says, okay, you're the side character. So like, here's your reaction. The kid's like, oh boy. And then the mom comes and he's like, Ralphie, don't stop beating him up. Stop. Oh boy, we're all going to get in trouble. I thought that was, you could have just sort of had them be side characters, but they, for what you get in the script, also feel like
there's
real characters.
There's definitely something to them. Yeah.
Poor Schwartz when Ralphie says fudge, only he didn't say fudge, and then he tells his mom.
Yeah.
Now I'd heard that word about 100 times a day from my old man, but he tells her that it was Schwartz, and so we get to hear in probably one of the broadest comedy bits in the movie. She calls Schwartz's mom. He said what? You can hear her on the other side of the phone.
Yeah, there's very broad comedy in it for sure.
Oh, child abuse. It's funny.
It cracked me up for sure. There's like that was another thing too of like remembering this movie. I like when he's like beating up the kid and he's like cursing or like whatever fake cursing like that.
Yes.
That reminds me of like I feel like I always remember in like kindergarten or like first grade like having a blow up situation like that where like one of my friends like tackled me and hurt me or something, and like in a very uncharacteristic to me now, I remember like getting on top of them and like hitting them or whatever and getting in trouble for like cursing, and I remember it like that. But now I'm starting to think like, did I even do that, or is like that movie like that element of the movie just like imprinted in my brain or something? You know what I mean?
That's interesting.
I don't know. That's so long ago. But
that speaks to how suffused into our culture this film is. I was thinking about the idea that when you see the scene that comes pretty early in the film when Flick, gets his tongue stuck to the pole, how many kids know that your tongue will stick to a pole because of this movie rather than wondering, would my tongue stick to this thing, and sticking your tongue on something in the winter. It's instructive in that way.
Yeah, like I feel like I remember that, like knowing that, but like I don't know how, and it's probably just from that because, like I said, it was probably ubiquitous at that point. Like,
yeah,
I've definitely witnessed that too. Like that's a thing that holds up through time. I feel like kids still do that, probably.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, no, I'm sure they still do it. You can't stop a kid from doing that, but you wouldn't be taken off guard. You'd be worried about the fire department showing up. I love the timing in that scene because we see poor Flick out there, and then Ralphie's like, oh, no. And then hey, it's the fire department. Oh, no. The cops are here. Oh, no. And they finally get him off, and all the kids are watching, and the kids all, clap when the cops finally get his tongue off the pole. Just taking time for all those bits. I just, I don't know why Melissa McCarthy is my punching bag, but I've certainly seen a lot of new style comedy movies where she's been at the head of them. But, this would just be, it would just be like chaos, if we were trying to do this with in a modern comedy movie. They wouldn't give you the crowd reaction. They wouldn't wait for all these beats. It would just be, you would either say some kid got his tongue stuck to a pole, or it would just be happening in the background of something.
I did sort of think about something like that because there are I said like the things sometimes that are like supposed to be like the big set pieces of comedy in this, like I like don't work for me as much, but I like at least appreciated that they were like set up and written and like had a payoff as opposed to just like, whatever, Kristen Wiig going like, oh my God, like, did you really stick your tongue to that pole? Like, oh my God, what, like, and they just like, kind of riff on it. Like,
right.
Yeah. I like that they at least had like a joke written,
Right. Yeah. It's executed thoughtfully. And on that note, I think that the setting and the mise en scène of the movie is also presented thoughtfully. It isn't just like a very boomer Christmas. One of my favorite things that I always think about when I'm having dinner somewhere at somebody's house, or when I'm serving dinner like at my own house, I think about the moment in the film when they just take time to call out how hard his mom works. She like serves everybody and she sits down And then she's just about to take a bite, and the dad's like, give me some more potatoes. And she's like, and she has to get up and get the potatoes. And then she comes back down, and then Ralphie's like, oh, can I have some cabbage? And the voiceover is like, my mother had not had a hot meal to herself in 15 years. You just think about like, yeah, that's what you would have expected to happen back then. Not only because that was her societal role, but also everything was handmade. You know, we're not just door dashing something and everybody gets their burrito.
Yeah, totally. And that was a fair like thing to show. I also think like that probably though for like the boomers who love it, like they still probably watch that and think like it's one of those like old like kind of battle of the sexes tropes that they call out, but they also just think like, well, that's the way it is. You know what I mean? Like we call these things out, but it's just kind of how it is. I don't know. Like that I feel like I experience that all the time where it's like they'll make fun of it, but they're still just like, yeah, you know, but that's what we do.
Well, it's not going to be rectified in this film.
No,
like
and I'm not saying like the movie, it doesn't make it right. I'm just thinking of like, I think this could still like go down really easy for, you know, a boomer or whatever, you know. I don't think it's like calling them out necessarily or whatever.
Yeah.
Not that it needs to, but I don't know.
Yeah. That kind of conflict in sexual politics comes to a head when the old man wins a major award, which turns out to be a leg lamp.
Yeah, he's very proud of this. Yeah.
Yes, he is, and I don't. I could say that I've been watching this movie for over 30 years at this point, and I still don't get the lamp. I didn't understand it when I was a child. The appeal. Now I guess I understand obliquely the appeal, but I still don't get. It's just so weird. And it's so weird it must have happened for real. But like, does a stocking-legged lamp go in the same category as the pen that, you know, you turn it upside down and the girl's clothes fall off? Like that sort of thing? Like I just don't. It's so strange. I can't imagine anything like that ever existing, but I guess it did.
Yeah, I don't know. That's one of those things that time before the internet doesn't really make as much sense to me. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because even in like the pre-internet world that I experienced, like if people wanted to like look at sexual images, there was still better ways than, you know, a pen or a lamp or something.
Yeah. I wonder if this is like, at least for a guy who was born possibly in the 1800s, this is him putting bikini car wash girl posters in the inside of his garage or something like that.
Right, yeah.
Only it's not in the inside of the garage. It's in the front window because it's a major award.
Yeah, he's proud of it, which is weird, but...
Yeah. And you know, I love that it's presented because it's all presented from the point of view of Ralphie. Now he's an adult narrator and we do see the adults perform, but his understanding and the context is from his childlike understanding of the context, which is like nil. He knows that he kind of likes it and it feels kind of nice to touch, but he doesn't really understand it. And so I like the fact that it's all played out in these exchanges between the dad and the mom, where he's so excited about it and then she becomes more and more horrified, and then of course when she accidentally breaks it and he's so frustrated about that, but you know, that's what happened.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like seeing the argument play. Yeah, I like that because I honestly say I think you said like you take the narration out and it's not as good or whatever, but that was kind of the elements, maybe because it was more like explicit about what's going on. Like there were parts with the narration where it had sort of that rose colored nostalgia stuff that for me it was a little bit like, all right, like I don't, you know, whatever. Yeah. This was so great, I'm sure, you know.
I'd be curious to see, but Topher Grace or somebody should do a cut with no narration. Just give us like, you know, 10 minutes of like the hot scenes and see, because I think the narration adds kind of a filigree to it. You know, it sort of adds an accent and grace note to it. There are a couple like good you know, snatches of dialogue or good tags on jokes that come in the narration, but I think the whole thing plays out fairly well in its staging so that you wouldn't necessarily need the narration. But then of course we wouldn't have the Wonder Years.
Right. For me, I think it's like I do like that sort of like getting and doing some of that warm Christmas stuff that's kind of nostalgic, you know.
Yeah.
What
yeah. But also the politics of a child's life, because he's enjoying it because he's a child, but also he's always, and the narration does help with this. We're not just watching the boy be overwhelmed by the joy of the spirit of Christmas. He's also like looking at the rifle and thinking, okay, I got to do this. I got to convince my mom. I'm going to slip Red Ryder BB gun ads into her Look magazine. I got to make sure I nail this. He's thinking about the politics of how he's going to get this thing that he wants.
There is a good humor to that, because you're thinking like, why would her seeing the ad in her magazine make her want to?
Yeah.
And he's like, I have to mention to her subtly, when it's like, she just wants to know what you want for Christmas. You know what I mean? Like,
To him, it makes perfect sense. When I come home with an A on this theme about the Red Ryder BB gun, she's going to be like, this kid should get a BB gun. That just makes sense to him.
Yeah, that definitely, like, when he's working that out in his head, like that, it definitely helps to kind of know his thought process there, for sure.
Something else that I liked that relates to the experience, this being experienced by a kid, is that I love how, and this works with this helps the pacing too. We move from like set piece to set piece without them having to go to the Grand Canyon or, you know, the house burned down or something like that. Like you'll have like 3 different scenes that happen just in the course of almost real time on a snowy evening in their house. So the kid is, he's eating like a piggy or something like that, or there's some blow up over the lamp, and then, the radio show's on. So he's got to run to the radio show and he gets the decoder ring, and it just moves from set piece to set piece like a kid's life. Like we all forget what it's like to be a kid and have no plans, no expectation, nothing that we have to do. We don't have to get up for work in the morning. And so your life is just you being dragged between activities that, you know, that your adult family has planned or has to do for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And so sometimes they're fun, like going to the zoo or something like that. And sometimes it's going to Auntie Carol's house and, it's going to be hell for a few hours. And I think that being jerked around like that really comes out in the film in the way that they go from scene to scene.
Yeah, it does really feel like it is sort of like a book with just kind of these little mini chapters in it that are just kind of like different little events, you know, like kind of their own little short sketches within the story or something.
Yeah,
and they kind of tie it all together too by the end. So it's fitting. It isn't like, it doesn't totally feel like it's like meandering or anything.
No, not at all. And everything lasts, I think, the right amount of time. Like everywhere that they are. Like the scene goes for a little bit and then it gives you something else. This movie didn't invent like the family comedy, obviously, and neither did The Simpsons. But do you think this had an influence on The Simpsons?
I guess so. I mean, it's just sort of got kind of that Americana vibe, I guess, to it. So
Yeah.
I could sort of see that, yeah.
I suppose. Like The Simpsons came out in the very late 80s, almost 90s. And when I was watching it, I just got the feeling of like precocious young kid, younger sibling that is essentially a baby or just not really a part of the story. The henpecked mom, the dad who's always trying to get into some kind of trouble.
I feel like it's more, I mean, maybe it's kind of both a part of it, but also like probably inspired by a lot of that kind of that more boomer classical view of like, you know, the American Christmas, American family or whatever. And that The Simpsons is sort of, you know, playing off of as well. So it's probably both like a part of that and also inspiring it.
Yeah, although if you watch some of the early, the cynicism of The Simpsons grows as the show is on for a long time. You know, some of the early Simpsons is close to this in terms of like the family message, the nostalgia, and that sort of thing. But it definitely gets worse. Well, it does get worse, but you know what I mean.
Eventually, it changes, and then it gets worse after that. Yeah, it's a weird roller coaster.
Something that I think that this movie nails well, and when you see things like this, I'm not sure it always works, is the fantasy sequences, like the things that are only taking place in Ralphie's kind of imagination. which don't it isn't a full on like Walter Mitty-esque type thing, which of course we're familiar with, but it serves to merely ground the opposite of ground. It serves to like sell like the things that he's concerned about, but also gives us a chance to like let the actors do more. Let the adult actors do funny stuff. Let Peter Billingsley show some of his talent in the Black Bart sequences, or like when he gets soap poisoning and he sees that his parents are horrified at the abuse that they have committed on him as a child.
Oh,
One of the things I really like about that scene is that this, of course, is like we're seeing this through the lens of the narrator, who is the real life guy who wrote these stories, and so they really happened to him. And he is a writer, he was a radio host and a humorist, and so Ralphie has been sent to bed because he's in trouble. He's had fudge, and he's had his mouth washed out with soap, and he's having this fantasy of like his parents being sorry. And it's hilarious, but as we cut from the fantasy to him real life in bed, he's crying, like his cheeks are wet because he was crying, but he's laughing to himself. And it reminded me of like, that's how this guy, Gene Shepard, became Gene Shepard. Like that's how a person who is funny, a person who is a creative writer and author, things happen to them and they imagine scenarios. They are, influenced by the ups and downs of their lives. And I thought it was interesting, like that Ralphie was kind of, he was entertaining himself with this story that he was telling himself, when in real life he would then entertain other people with that story later. So you're seeing, it's not exactly the portrait of an artist as a young BB gun owner, but kind of close to that.
You kind of, you sort of see that. It just sort of too made me, like, I definitely could relate to that as a child, like, just having sort of these like fantasies like in the moment too, of like, I wish things were different or whatever, yeah. Some of the I did really like that one you mentioned where they were like regretful later on for what they did.
Oh, no.
So,
I told you not to use Life Bowie. Yeah.
Some of the fantasy seeds were like other elements of the movie to me too, where they didn't all like kind of click for me, but kind of like you said, it does sort of just move along. So I was like, okay, like whatever, that wasn't that funny, but I'm sure they thought it was great. And then it's gone,
Yeah. The for a film with essentially no people of color in it, except for, of course, the Chinese guys at the end, the movie doesn't really get a chance to show either a realistic portrayal of white people's interaction with minorities at that time, I guess in the mid-40s or whenever this came out, or where it was supposed to be set, or to sort of redeem some representations of them. So we don't really get that, but we do get the scene that everybody remembers, of course, the scene in the Chinese restaurant.
Oh, which, that was pretty rough, I think. I'm not going to be an apologist for it. I think it's rough because of our sensitivity to portrayals of people who aren't, white people that live in Indiana. So it's not great as far as that goes, although the movie gets like one joke out of them, mispronouncing the letter L, and then kind of goes on. And the family enjoys the dinner, and Ralphie does say that, that was one of the best Christmas dinners they've ever had. And to be fair, like I myself, partially because I ended up, my partner's a Jew, or is Jewish. We have Chinese food on Christmas every Christmas. It's just a tradition that we do. But every time I do, I think about this movie and about how not everybody is celebrating the holidays the same way that you are. So even though we would almost definitely cut this out of the TNT replay of this every year, I still think that it had a positive effect on me. Yeah, there's sort of an element of that, sure. Yeah, the joke itself, it was just sort of too, like, they did the joke, but then, like, they had the one guy, like, be like, no, say it like this, and it's like, okay, I mean, I know what the joke is, like...
Yeah.
It was like one. It was like an over-explained kind of racist joke, which is the real sin.
I suppose that's a good point. I always thought that that was a good element because it shows that it's not making them completely ignorant of how they're being funny. The guy's like, guys, we talked about this. Like, we want to do it like this. But you're right. Having to over-explain the joke is probably the worst sin.
I did sort of like, by the end of it, I was still like, okay, but it lost a little goodwill for me because I was sort of, like I said, kind of like half on the elements of it that were sort of like the rose-colored nostalgia, and then they dropped that in, and I was like, okay, man, like,
yeah.
It made me like, things I liked, I was like, you know what?
We were 2 minutes from the end. You couldn't have just slid into home without,
It made me go like, because some of the things, like I said, I was mixed on, but then I was like, when that happened, I was like, if you think this is worthy of being mentioned, like, your life's not interesting. And I was like, then I was mad at everything, you know? Because that's what it kind of captures. It does kind of capture like a lot of things that are, like, in the grand scheme of things, like, kind of banal, but it's sort of a snapshot of a type of life. So then that's inherently kind of interesting. But then, I don't know, and that knocked me off of it a little bit.
Yeah, and the whole family, like, they don't run into anybody who's, a shade darker than eggshell throughout the entire film. So, having that be like the one interaction is like, I don't know. It just, like we said, I don't think it's mean-spirited, but it definitely stands out in this day and age.
Sure. They'll remake this someday, and they'll do,
oh my God,
they'll do like the updated version. Like they did, I think they're doing it with the Wonder Years right now, actually, but.
Yeah, that's true.
And then, and they'll just like be like, look, we fixed this one, and we don't have to think about that one. There'll be a culture war about it. We'll pick a side, and it'll be fun.
Well, let's talk about them remaking it. So there was a sequel to this film. I would say it's unofficial. I mean, it's technically official. It's also directed by Bob Clark, and it's based on Gene Shepard's book. It was based on the same book, but also some of his other stories. It's called My Summer Story, and it stars none of the same people. Charles Grodin plays the dad. Kieran Culkin is Ralphie, and Mary Steenburgen is the mom in this case. And so it is essentially like a story of a summer vacation, I guess, that they take that happened to Gene Shepard in real life. And that's pretty much it. It was not a success. It made like $70,000 total. And so not well remembered, but also narrated by Shepard. And maybe some superfans of A Christmas Story are familiar with it. I'm not. Then there was A Christmas Story 2.
Oh my God.
Which is a direct sequel and very direct to video, that is. And not quite so good. That one stars Daniel Stern as Ralphie's dad. Yeah. And it's funny because Daniel Stern was also the voice of the narrator in The Wonder Years. So it's kind of the inspiration coming full circle to inspire this direct-to-video sequel to Christmas Story 2. It is also based on Gene Shepard's writing. Of course, it was produced after he had already passed away. But yeah, just doing more stuff with the Parker family.
Seems not necessary. I don't know.
Not necessary at all.
No. I mean, yeah, I get it though. They got to find ways to make more money out of it, I guess.
And it's set in the 40s still. It's like a couple years out. I think Ralphie's in high school, and so I watched like a YouTube video about it or something, and it's like weird because Ralphie is like 15, so he's thinking about girls and he's thinking about sex and stuff. It's just like a weird place to send. I mean, I guess it makes sense when people's real lives, but like. You don't want to think about Ralphie like trying to get his driver's license and trying to see up girls' skirts or something like that.
Yeah, you'd think you'd almost like make him the age of the dad or something, and then
like his kids,
yeah, like Christmas Story Legacy or something,
a Christmas blog, and then you do, you set it in the modern day. Which I'm amazed they haven't tried to do yet, but it's coming.
It's coming. Yeah, it's totally coming.
And he has a vlog. That's what it is. And so his narration is him talking to the screen like Modern Family.
Oh,
he's like,
totally.
I really want
yeah.
this. What's he want? He wants a water bong or any cigarette or something like that for Christmas.
Yeah, he probably
You'll
wants
get metal in your lungs.
Yeah, that's perfect. No one wants toys anymore.
Yeah,
I
suppose
they want more for their vlogging setup. Kids these days.
Yeah, I need that anamorphic lens. It's only $20,000. Yeah. Or he wants what Spider-Man in the Spider-Man movies wanted Legos, I guess. So maybe he wants a big Lego set or something.
Yeah, keep it wholesome.
I saw a thing, take note, boomers. I saw a thing that said that investing in Legos is more profitable than investing in gold. Because Lego sets, and I'm assuming certain Lego sets, always increase in value. People still want Legos. Gold, depending on, how much you can even get or you're willing to buy, gold fluctuates, but Legos are a solid investment.
I've learned that gold is useless in the future from watching Star Trek.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah, when we hit Star Trek, you won't need it anyway.
I'll need it to press my latinum in, but that's about it.
Yes, right. That's great. Now I want to see. I'm going to get one of my author friends to write a short story about the adoption of latinum, and so all the guys who held on to gold futures for forever are finally like, yay, we can finally do a clearance sale on our gold.
There's probably some compromise they made, like we got to put this latinum
gold,
in
literally.
something, and they're like, how about all our gold?
Why not like rubies?
Scheme.
You can put it in whatever you want.
Yeah, no,
Put it inside of a leg-shaped lamp.
That would make a great currency. Yeah.
We're just how many leg lamps is that? Okay, let's see what I got.
Thud just falling out on the table.
Oh no.
Oh yeah, they break too easy.
Yeah, it's a very fragile currency. Well, I think that we nailed it. I think we did about as good as we can for a Christmas story. So we will move on to a word from our sponsors, and we'll be back with more backtracking.
Hi, I'm Mikan Hana.
And I'm Caliban.
And we're the hosts of the Sailor Noob podcast. I'm the expert.
And I'm the noob.
You're talking into the wrong end of the microphone.
Aye, aye.
Okay, every week we watch a new episode of Sailor Moon and learn about monsters, fashion, food, culture, and of course, the sailor warrior of love and justice, Sailor Moon.
All right, now, what is her rank? Is she an admiral or a rear admiral?
Okay, shh. The ad's almost over. We're a couple of magical people, and every week we Moon Prism Power make up a new episode.
Better midships. Steady as she goes.
Please stop that. Sailor Noob is available every Friday on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Shiver me timbers. Okay, we're back. It's time to talk about the Trek side of this equation. It's safe to say that everyone has a family member that they're proud of, someone who made it big, or fought in a war, or came to America from the old country. Tales about our storied forebears are passed down from generation to generation, and often make up part of the conversation at family holiday gatherings. How many of those stories are true, though? How many of our ancestors didn't come over on the Mayflower? How many of them weren't crucial actors in Civil War battles? How is it possible that so many of our relatives invented the Post-it note? Legends of our families, whether true or not, make up a great part of how we see ourselves and the destinies that we follow, something that Catherine Janeway learns the hard way in the 5th season Voyager episode 1159.
An exploration into Janeway's past
Shannon O'Donnell, the first of a long line of Janeway explorers.
turns her childhood hero
I wouldn't have become a Starfleet captain if it wasn't for her.
into a shattered dream.
The whole town was against her.
And history will never be the same
You're living in the past.
Sounds like you've been sleeping with the enemy.
on the next Star Trek Voyager.
Speaking of Trek people and their famous forebears, I read a thing from Denise Crosby the other day. She was posting about her famous uncle, Bing Crosby, and how every Christmas is kind of tough for her sometimes because everybody loves when all the famous Christmas carols and all the songs of yore come back, and she has to, like, every time she goes shopping in the every time she goes shopping at the grocery store, she has to hear her uncle, who she didn't know all that well, sing about Christmas, and so she's reminded of like her like weird family and sometimes the lack of connections that she has.
Being haunted by your uncle.
Yeah,
it's just the worst. Uncle Bing.
There's a movie called About a Boy starring Hugh Grant, and it takes place at Christmas time because he plays this sort of 40-something guy who lives alone. He's a bachelor and he's rich, and he got all his money from his father wrote the Christmas song "Santa's Super Sleigh," which in this universe is like their "All I Want for Christmas Is You." And so he enjoys his empty life of like spending money and casual sex, but he's reminded at the holidays that he was never very close to his father and he doesn't have those connections. And so there's a climactic scene sort of in the film where he's at his lowest point and he's shopping and that song comes on and he just kind of lays down like on the floor in the produce section, sort of comatose because of hearing this song.
So this is we're talking more like a more conflicted view of your past, I guess, or like your lineage, which I mean, I feel like the way this episode we're talking about kind of looks at that stuff, it's almost like an opposite view of like A Christmas Story. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Because you sort of have like in Christmas Story, it's looking back on that time more wistfully and like thinking of like they're kind of dazzled by all these toys and train sets and that they want, and like, oh, how much better could my life be? And this is, I mean, they're thinking about that in Star Trek of like these characters who like wanna, step forward into the new century with all this technology, but like then there's these other characters who are more like they want to, I guess, regress. I don't know. But it's sort of looking at those people in a way of like, that's a bad instinct. That's kind of, I feel like, what they're trying to say, I guess.
I think that this episode and the pairing of it with Christmas Carol are great discussion starters. However, I don't feel like this is a super strong episode, and I don't feel like their instinct might have been a good one, but I don't think that they follow it far enough. Kind of like a lot of like later Voyager outings. And the problem is that we have, I mean, they didn't know that we were going to compare it to Christmas Story, but that's what we're doing. The narrative in Christmas Story is itself a nostalgic recounting of what happened. So I don't know if Scott Farkas really had yellow eyes, but that's how Ralphie felt, right? And then Ralphie's story is intercut with his own fantasies about his world. His teacher's a witch, he's a cowboy hero with a gun and all that. And like in 1159, like we get 1159 might be the longest jump in narrative that we get in Star Trek history. That doesn't include, Q taking you back to the Big Bang or something like that. Like, as far as I know, we're not watching like video recreations. We're not watching a holodeck.
No,
and it isn't Janeway's like imagining about what her ancestor was like. We are just cutting back to 1999 and watching her or the year 2000. Yeah, it's the year 2000. And just watching like her life play out. There is no connection between those narratives other than the fact that it's her ancestor. And I think because when they started off to make this this episode, one of the things they said was, we want to do an episode that has no sci-fi elements. They wanted the episode to be all Janeway's ancestor back in the past doing her thing. And I'm glad that they didn't do that, because that's not called Star Trek. But it also, what we got isn't Star Trek fully, because Star Trek is supposed to use the trappings that they have to tell those stories. So I wish that this had been like, maybe Janeway thought that she was more, she does think that she's more famous than she is, but maybe she has like a hollow recording of what happened, or she is trying to create, she gets Paris to try to create like we're all going to watch what happened to my ancestor. And then she finds out as it goes on that it's a little different. And so we see maybe a different idealized portrayal of her ancestor early on, but then it becomes a more and more real story as it goes. Because all it is like you could just cut these two things. You could take all the scenes from A and all the scenes from B and just watch them separately, and they don't have necessarily anything to do with each other at all.
Yeah, well, I mean, they do sort of figure more stuff about the story, like
right. But as they're learning stuff, it's not like I feel like it should affect the other narrative.
Yeah,
about halfway through. After somebody goes through the old newspaper archives, and why does Voyager have like old newspaper clippings? How big is their database that they've got this? At one point they say we got from a Ferengi database. Do you mean like the Ferengi you met in False Prophets? Like why would a Ferengi shuttle have old Ohio Observer clippings in it? Like I know you guys can store a lot of data, but that seems excessive. But at one point she talks about how like, oh, so she wasn't an astronaut and she got married to this guy and they did this. And it's like, you're giving away the end of the present day narrative. Like, if they don't affect each other, then let them play out separately.
That's true. I do think like, it like was strange to like do it this way. Cause I've never seen it done like that in Star Trek. Like I even think of like, like, we did an episode where they did a Rashomon, but it's like they literally like used the technology or whatever, as opposed to them telling the story and us seeing it. But at the same time, I did just kind of like, I sort of just liked that the story they were telling wasn't. It was kind of nice that it was just like, here's like a non-sci-fi story, but like the way it was like framed or whatever, I think didn't fully worked. Like I do think they could have done what you suggested, where it's like like a holodeck recording or something. But I don't know, overall I thought like the story they actually portrayed was kind of neat because there was something novel about just it was like sort of like a Hallmark rom-com. It really was.
It kind of was. It kind of was. Put a pin in that. I'm gonna go back real quick here.
Sure.
Or maybe I don't have to. I was just going to say that, like when everybody gets together and they're talking about like their ancestors and all the crazy things they did, that's when like Janeway finds out that her ancestor was never part of the Mars Project or whatever. But it's like, I mean, it's like we know that from day one when we see her driving a station wagon, on Christmas Eve or whatever it is.
Right. Yeah. The way they interwove them, I think they could have done that better. Like they still could have had those same beats so they realize it, but like I think it's just the way they present it is strange, and you kind of know when the one dude's name is Janeway, like where it's going even before she says she got married. But I think they could have done it better for sure.
So getting back to what you were saying about it being a Hallmark movie, I think that does work. And this is like, I mean, sappy holiday movies have always existed, but this was Hallmark movie, I suppose, or at least Hallmark Channel movie. So good on them. But what would you say that the past narrative is really about in the first place? Like
I feel like with every Hallmark movie, it's sort of like these two people who are sort of opposites in some ways, who don't want to budge. They eventually like budge and sort of compromise on their two sort of views. And I
that Shannon like she decides that it's worth settling down, and then like Henry decides that
it's worth putting his chop in this thing they're trying to build
to be part of to be with her or something like that, because it's not like she's not like making it contingent on him giving up the bookstore for them to be together. It just sort of it seems really, like you've mentioned this before, like he seems really anti-science, and that's a weird position for the guy that our hero's ancestor will end up with, to get with on this show about being in space and meeting alien cultures and stuff like that. Like the thing is that his head is up his own ass reading a book. Like we get that part of it, but I just don't know why.
You know what though? Some of the things he's like I think at the time it probably didn't come this way, but like I think some of the things he's skeptical about in this episode are actually like worth being skeptical about, and I think sometimes Star Trek has blinders about it, because he is like he's like, oh, this is like a big there's like
public works project, and
there's like a corporate element to it. You know what I mean? And it makes me
there
think,
is. Yeah, there is. But in true Trek fashion, they are unable to really explore that. I found myself unable to decide whether Henry was, if I was on his side or not. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because he's fighting essentially against gentrification, but at the same time, like they want to do, it doesn't seem like a ton of people come to his bookstore, and for good or bad, like we all are familiar with the decentralization of like the American town. There are a lot of like downtowns, historic downtowns that are completely empty because there's just nothing going on there. And so sure, the smarmy guy who represents this company is like, no, we want to do something cool. But what they're describing sounds kind of cool. It's like it's an arcology that, you know, has like a scientific aspect to it, and it's going to provide all kinds of commercial opportunities. Like, what's Henry's problem here?
For me, what popped into my head was Elon Musk. I thought,
that's what this needed, an Elon Musk figure.
In the back of my mind, I couldn't stop thinking about it, and then I thought about how Star Trek was like. You know, Discovery,
instead of having
like, you want to be like Elon Musk, and I was like, I think that's what they think is just like, we're gonna do all this cool space stuff, and
why is he standing in the way of this cool idea? But at the same time, so I have a personal anecdote to connect to this, and I think it connects a little bit. There is literally in my town a bookstore that is an old bookstore that I discovered when I, you know how it is when you get a car and suddenly you're like, oh my God, there's another town with other stuff. Like, I discovered this bookstore and enjoyed going there. But it is on what is formerly the main corridor between these two big cities. And that corridor used to be, you know, Main Street. It used to be super important. Now it is not, because they've built another highway in between those cities. And so it's basically worthless. And there isn't a lot of successful businesses there, and there's a lot of crime, and you know the whole thing. And so the city, it took them years to do, but the city finally decided, we're going to build this public transit system, a train, like a tram there. And that meant that some of the businesses would have to be moved. And this guy, who I don't know personally, but I've, you know, talked to him in the bookstore, this guy was super against that idea, and he campaigned and he held it up for years, and then finally had to give way for personal reasons. And now, that his shop isn't even gone, but that tram is in that area. And I don't know, the tram has been really good, I think, for a lot of people. Like, I am skeptical of city initiatives that, you know, are tied into contracting connections and things like that. But this has allowed people to get from city to city, also get to the major university in the area. Like, it was a good thing ultimately, but a guy like that, like, stood in the way of it. And that's how I see Henry. Like, why can't Henry just open up his shop in the Millennium Gate? I mean, it seems like he will at the end of this thing.
Yeah, he does,
But I don't know why.
I looked at it from the opposite thing of like, they could just go anywhere. I don't know.
Yeah, but then it would be somebody in Canton, Ohio, or wherever it is that they want to send it. Like, there'd be some other Henry who's like, no, I've had this shop forever.
I guess I need more detail on like what the corporations that are putting this together was, you know, because that's what I'm immediately like, nope. Like, I don't care.
Yeah. And Trek is like, you know, is not giving us those details. And speaking of nostalgia, you know, this is something that we've talked about on this show a lot this year. You know, Trek is mired in nostalgia. You know, it's presenting this future that this guy came up with almost 60 years ago. And it has so far really not tried to challenge that future a whole lot. And so all that being said, and myself being a Star Trek fan of many decades, I don't know if the show is on Henry's side or not. It seems like the show isn't on Henry's side.
No, I think what it is trying to present it in a way of a typical rom-com, I guess, where you're supposed to kind of look at both of them as sort of like, you guys need to like get on each other's level a little bit, you know? Like, what's really important is the two of you coming and get together, you know? So I think by the end, it's supposed to be viewed for him that, okay, he he sort of accepted this, like, I think it's not on his side, but he is sort of, agreed to go along with it. And then I think what we're supposed to take away with Janeway is that, okay, so your relative isn't this great figure you thought she was, but what's important was she was a person. She's your ancestor. She seemed to have a great life, a great family. That's what's
well,
important.
they really lay that on thick at the end.
Yeah, a little
and
too
also,
much. But
she lost, so she wasn't cut out to be an astronaut, I guess, but then she went into engineering and then through no fault of her own, like lost her job. And we're excited at the end because she can be an engineer again. Although in the year that this was made, in the year 2000, that's great. But like you said, from a modern perspective, you just know that there's some Elon Musk figure who is behind like the Millennium Gate. And so what is she really contributing by working for this thing? I don't know. Maybe we have to put like 2000 brains on when we watch it, but
you do. There's plenty of episodes.
I'm skeptical of her involvement, like with the corporation that's trying to create the Millennium Gate.
I think there's a lot of episodes you kind of have to do that with. I think I sort of hinted at that when we did like First Contact too. Whereas like a lot of these issues they're talking about, it's like I just wouldn't care right now because there's so many other things that, like it's like I don't. Elon Musk wants to go to Mars. Like I don't care. Like I don't know. That's
and
it's weird then to be watching Star Trek and it's like. It seems like just the idea of going to space is going to solve all our problems, Yeah. Meeting a Vulcan, I guess. And then we chill out or whatever.
Yeah. I liked the payoff, I guess. I mean, it's kind of cheesy, but like Ancestors Eve, this holiday that they create at the end of the show. I do think that that's a good idea. And it's probably something that I'm surprised Voyager invented that. I'm surprised it doesn't already exist. Like in this, we often lose sight of the fact that the Federation is made up of 150 worlds. You would definitely need to know your co-workers' histories. We reintroduced that with Tom Paris trying to learn things about Talaxia and Neelix trying to learn about like Earth world history.
Yeah,
but like something like that must already exist in their universe.
It seems like, I think about, I feel like in Data's day where he's, mentioning the different, holidays and stuff they have, I think they probably just seem to be down with, we'll do whatever, We'll do the Klingon exchange program, I feel like they are just open to, the cultural exchange, I guess.
Yeah.
I do think that makes me think is, actually, you can say, Janeway's ancestor or whatever isn't this great astronaut, but in a way she is responsible for getting this thing built, because if not for her and Mr. Janeway falling in love, he probably would have never budged,
That's true. I mean, it would have been built somewhere else, but maybe we wouldn't have Captain Janeway. There'd be somebody else in charge of
but she's responsible for it being built there. I guess you could say.
Yeah. I think it's Neelix. It might be Neelix. I'm not sure. Maybe it's Chakotay. Somebody in the episode says, when Janeway is, she's not too broken up over it, but we do see her kind of like, shit, I thought I'd been told this story over. It's an Elizabeth Warren moment, right? Like I was always told that I was part Cherokee. Guess I'm not.
Yeah. Oh no.
But somebody says, she's your ancestor. She didn't know that she was supposed to live up to your great expectations. And I think that that's something that we can all identify with. Do you have any famous ancestors in your family?
No, not that I can recall. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know if I really do either. I know that my uncle got really into, as a lot of older men do, got really into our genealogy and supposedly traced us all the way back to the old country in England. But I think we were horse thieves, so nothing.
That
really,
rocks.
All that great.
That rules.
Depends on who you're taking them from. Yeah, if you're taking them from
Robin
the Lord of the county, that's fine. But yeah, but I think that does exist. The people. share stories about their ancestors and what so-and-so did. And you think about yourself as like, wow, would I have been a good horse thief? You kind of put yourself in their shoes. And for somebody like Janeway, who I don't think that we get into a little, but we don't get into too much because we don't like the idea of entitlement in the Star Trek universe. But she is like a legacy family. Her father was a captain. I'm sure somebody before that was a captain. And so she is the sort of scion of this legacy, of this history of greatness. And then to find out that, her great grandmother was just eating cookies and living in a station wagon it could be kind of shaking for her.
Maybe that makes it fit with Christmas Story even more, because it's sort of like, it isn't just this purely like, remember this great thing. It's sort of just like a looking back at a time and being like, it's actually sort of unremarkable. It's like, it's just kind of normal.
We can appreciate even the sort of mundane histories of our ancestors, because they're important to us.
You think it's going to be about some great feat, and it is just like a little love story.
So I wonder if that's, this episode is opened by Neelix talking about the Great Wall of China, and later they talk about the 7 ancient wonders of the world. And I wonder if that's meant to contrast with the sort of very mundane personal story that Janeway ends up learning about her.
I think so.
Her great ancestor.
Yeah, I think so. I can see like what they're going for a lot of times in the episode. And like we kind of talked about before, I think it doesn't always hit the way it should. It's like wonky, I guess, and it's the way it's laid out. But I sort of appreciate, like the idea of the episode.
We do know that the Ferengi like Wall Street, I guess, or the history of Wall Street. Although it makes me think that I just want to see Quark watching the Michael Douglas movie Wall Street sometime.
He's like, this is aspirational.
We need a new rule of acquisition. Greed is good.
They could remake that, I think, with the Ferengi. That'd be cool.
With just Ferengi. With real geckos.
Oh.
There's also, there's a little, this is, of course, the time when we're trying to cram 7 of 9 into everything. So she's got a little connection in there. And I had a little bit of regret, a little bad feeling when Neelix is talking to her about, well, you don't know, someday in the future there might be a 7 of 9.5. And, knowing now, having seen Picard, what happens to 7 of 9 in the future, it's like, oh, that sucks. That's too bad. I mean, I guess, she could still have a child, but her future doesn't exactly turn out that way.
Yeah. How could they couldn't have known,
Well, no, they can't have known, but I resent the idea that sometimes you have to just leave your characters alone because they can have a future that way. You don't want to think that they're going to be, down to 12% shields and being thrown around and fighting evil aliens forever. Sometimes you just want to go to your kid's high school football game or something like that, right? But if we keep bringing these, to go back to Picard, we have to then fill in 30 years of alienation from Starfleet, and his best friends hate him, and he lives all alone with his dog, and it's like, oh man, that isn't at the end of Star Trek Generations. You don't think that that's going to be Picard's life. You think that he is going to find somebody and have that Christmas, that future Christmas.
Yeah. For some characters, I feel like that sort of thing makes sense, or it's like that's even when they give them something hopeful, it's like they're kind of just inclined to go that way. But yeah, sometimes you just want it to be like the end, I guess. Or like,
they lived happily ever after. Yeah. But instead Data's going to blow up, and then one of his kids is going to blow up, and everybody's blowing up.
Right. Like, they've all got to go through this tragedy until we're not talking, like there's just no more story to tell. They're dead or whatever.
Yeah. Leave us alone, Mel Brooks. Like at the beginning of Robin Hood Men in Tights. Every time you want to do a movie, you set our houses on fire.
There's some, hopefully they'll just, like Riker, I feel like they're just chilling. They had some tragedy.
Yeah, no, Riker's still going.
But now he's just making pizza for the kid.
Yes. Oh, I hope that continues. I hope we don't have another season 3 of Picard.
We got to kill another kid.
Yeah, their planet blows up, and yeah.
Their planet, yeah.
Well, it was supposed to be an episode. Actually, it was supposed to be an episode, a Q episode originally. I think was the pitch that somehow Q would be involved. It would be a Christmas Carol type thing, and then they'd also pull a little Times Arrow and have Guinan appear in contemporary in that era of Earth. Yeah, but they dropped all that, decided to go no sci-fi technology, but technology, the technology of the future, is what makes Trek Trek, and it facilitates what the characters are doing. Just as often, it's the complication that they're dealing with. So on every show, we randomly pick from a list of Star Trek technologies, we add what we get to the non-Trek media, and we subtract it from the Trek episode to see how each would be different. We call this our technological exchange, and we pick off a list of Trek technologies that goes like this. We've got phasers, holodecks, tricorders, transporters, warp drives, replicators, communicators, shields, advanced medical technology, and androids. No Red Ryder BB gun on this list. And if I roll on my random number selecting technology, I come up with a number 5, which is warp drive. If warp drive existed in the world of A Christmas Story, what then? Little Orphan Annie would be a lot more exciting, I'll tell you that much.
There's a lot that would be different. It's almost hard to kind of wrap my head around specificity, I guess. Like, there'd be warp trains. Gotta bring those back.
There would definitely be warp trains.
Or they have spaceships.
Yeah, they would have spaceships.
Okay.
A lot of times we've read some old sci-fi, like classic sci-fi for this show. And you'll see a lot when you read an Asimov story or a Heinlein book. It is people in space, but it's like the space of the 50s, right? So like the dad is smoking a pipe still, but it's like an alien pipe or something like that. So I can imagine a Christmas Story that is merely set in space. And so they're going to they get in the broken down shuttle car or whatever to go to the Ricksman's store to check out the toys, to see Space Santa. Like, I don't think it would have to change that much. It would all be transported into space.
Yeah. I could totally see, like, that's
you got to put Randy in a spacesuit, to go to school, because they're gonna spacewalk to school.
Oh yeah. What do they get their tongue stuck to a conduit or something? I don't know.
A space pole, yeah.
I'm thinking like that's the next remake of it is. Well, what if we did it in space?
Just put it in space,
or like a near future one, yeah. Because
the old put it in space thing is that we're taking a break on that. We got to start putting things in space again. Not just Jason and Freddy, but yeah, just let's put it in space.
Yeah, what it would be called a Christmas Odyssey,
a Christmas Saga,
2001 : a Christmas Story.
Odyssey. Yeah. You get your tongue stuck to a monolith, right?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, just seeing those like 50s values exist in the space. Because again, when you think about it, that's if Gene Roddenberry gave us anything, this ex-soldier cop who gave us this future that we all love that's so progressive, he did give us that. He gave us like a future that didn't look like the 50s in space, which their competitors, Lost in Space, as much as I like it, is the 50s in space. Like, that's what it is. It's a mom and a dad and their kids. And Gene did give us a world that was, a bunch of multicultural people all living lives that we don't necessarily recognize at the time that it came out. I think that is a good thing.
Yeah, and you knew how to have fun along the way.
So like instead of the the boiler or the furnace that he's swearing at and creating a cloud of profanity, it'd be like the warp core. Like they have a small old outdated warp core that powers their habitat.
It really would be an episode of just like the B stories. It would be like a Data's Day type episode of, other than like the Romulan thing in that episode, but like otherwise it's just about like, learning to dance and like just really boring stuff. Not boring, but you know what I mean? Like
on their little ship. Maybe they have like a little like personal ship, and so they're trying to eat like their food pills or whatever. And then he's like, "Shh, do you hear that? Oh, it's a clinker." The red alert goes off. He's got to go stop the thing from exploding.
Yeah, it's just like we gotta eject the warp core, but it's just kind of nonchalant. Like you're kind of upset, but it's not like life or death.
Yeah, right.
Oh,
and
the warp core.
The lamp is an Orion leg. It's a green leg.
Oh,
like, why do we have to have that in the house? Come on.
This would star Alexander, I think.
Oh, you did it again, but I accept it. I accept it. This is, yes, the Worf family Christmas.
This was like some Season 6 TNG, nonsense, I guess.
Worf is reading about the Parisi Squares results. He's like, the monsters of the Milky Way, more like the chipmunks of the Milky Way.
Yeah, that's perfect.
All right, successful. I think we should move on. What if we took warp drive out of, I guess, the future parts of the Voyager episode?
They are kind of just hanging out, I feel like.
Yeah, they really are.
Oh, man.
They really are. We have to totally rewrite it. So, Janeway, look, Starfleet could exist, but it would definitely be a more local affair than an intergalactic space force. But Janeway could still exist. She could still have what she thinks is a famous ancestor that has inspired her, and she finds out that it isn't quite what she seems.
I'm sort of thinking, though, because Voyager, she's probably a lot more bored because Voyager is lost in space or whatever, trying to get home. And so she's got more time to look stuff up.
Uh-huh.
And so
you're thinking that there is a Voyager, and it is a not slower than light vessel, but it falls through a wormhole or something, and it's a lost in space situation.
I was thinking more like because of their current situation. Like, I think she's only Googling her past because someone asked her and she's got nothing better to do. But like, if Voyager never got flung across the galaxy, maybe she just never finds out.
So she is like, yeah, she's like some kind of space captain in the solar system, and she's
just too busy.
Some Christmas Eve, she is Googling. She's going on the holo version of Ancestry.com.
Yeah, though you mentioned so there probably would be longer space flights, so probably a lot of downtime. I'm just thinking about how much downtime they have on Voyager. Probably a decent amount.
Yeah, Harry Kim talks about that when he talks about his ancestor who was a spacer, and they didn't have warp drive or FTL drive, so they went to sleep, and took long hypersleeps.
Okay, So,
which, by the way, was every person in Starfleet, like their ancestors were also like sailors or in Starfleet or something like that?
It sort of has the sort of ring of like, you mentioned like the entitlement thing, but sort of that like, it makes me think of like, I don't know, that era of even like politics, or even now still, where it's like just people who are just like, yeah, they're the most qualified. They've risen to the top of the meritocracy or whatever. But the truth is like, their dad and their grandpa and their great grandpa were all, like captains.
Military families Yeah. That's interesting. We still aren't really doing this, but we never really get the idea. We never really get an idea of how people in Federation, like regular civilians of the Federation, how they think about Starfleet. Do they think that they're a bunch of like jackbooted, fascists, or do they think that they're amazing explorers, or you just don't think about them because they're off in a deep quadrant while you're just living on your space station?
The closest thing I can think of is like with like Picard's like brother or whatever.
Oh yeah.
And even like,
because and then his friend is like, I know you're doing like space science, but we got a ton of science on Earth. We're trying to like raise Atlantis. You should be getting into this.
Yeah, even in that situation, like they got a nice like vineyard, and Picard seems to have a family history of like explorers.
Yeah.
So maybe it's more the brother who didn't live up to it. I don't know. Yeah, there's.
But he doesn't feel bad about it, though. I think he loves what he does.
Yeah.
Of course, he's also immersing himself in like generational privilege, and they own this vineyard and have for hundreds of years. But
so Brian
I wonder, like,
is kind of a normal dude.
Well, his ancestor was a union man. We know that.
So he's got like working class background.
My grandfather was the engineer on a freighter or something like that. I always wondered, because in this universe where there is supposedly there's no money, and so there isn't any like generational wealth, or there isn't any, I'm of the Nantucket Picards or something like that. The most important thing would be community. The most important thing would be, your connections to your friends and the people you live with, and like being upstanding in your society or your town or your environment, and doing cool things like, oh, did you hear that what's his name he's working on the Atlantis project? Oh, that's a cool thing. And so the sacrifice that people in Starfleet make is, sure, sometimes you can, you've got faster than light communication, but you're going to be off in the middle. You're going to be thousands of light years away and not be able to do that. Go to the parties, know what the gossip is. You are kind of isolating yourself. I think that's something that people who are in Starfleet have to accept, is that they are going to be kind of out of the world, out of society.
Yeah,
like
true.
People in our armed forces do now. You can get on the internet and talk to your loved ones at home, but you're not there. You're on deployment. Yeah,
I think they do probably get a certain level of prestige or whatever, though, that it's probably worth it, Like I think there probably is, even though there's not generational wealth, it probably helps to have, a dad who was like a admiral or something, a respected admiral,
Yeah, I suppose. We'll never know, because unless Star Trek decides to dig into that, we'll never know. And there's never been a more perfect time, because as we begin to see more and more of the conflicts that America starts or is involved with as being unjust, and there is, I think, more than ever, a question of not the people, like not the actual troops, but like what the troops are employed to do by our government. I think we question that more and more. And so I think that there would never be a better time for us to have a storyline where the people are like, oh, Starfleet, they're doing this and they're always doing that. I think that we could see something like that.
I was sort of thinking, because I was watching, there's an episode, or it just becomes a ongoing thing, where Jake Sisko becomes like, he's reporting the news that's like Starfleet news, and I was just thinking of like how strange it is that the captain's son is like reporting state news, you know what I mean? Like this all seems very weird to me, and then like Wei Yun even at one point says like, there's no way like you're, impartial. Obviously he's like evil dude or whatever, but it is sort of true though. Like you're going to get like a fair and balanced view of like other issues from Jake Sisko. I don't know.
Yeah. Like if Michael Flynn's kid was like reporting on, what was going on in Afghanistan or something, you'd be like, okay, I don't think I really trust that as like a source.
Like what was Jake's write-up of In the Pale Moonlight or whatever,
Yeah, right. Or like, what happened to Jake after he wanted to report on In the Pale Moonlight and then he disappeared? He was in that shuttle crash.
Oh boy, it was all worth it.
Oh, Christmas. It's all Christmas as far as I'm concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that's it for this year of backtracking. And, I wanted to say thanks to the listeners for going with us on this journey. The journey will continue, but I think it's always important to kind of look back as we've done on what we've done and what we've accomplished. And I've appreciated being able to talk about Star Trek, especially with you, my co-host, Gui Fame.
Yes, this has been a fun year. Not the actual year, but like our year.
Yes, this has been a fun escape from the year that we actually live in. Well, we are going to, of course, continue into the next year, and we've got another episode coming up. What's next on Backtracking?
So, I guess in the same vein as taking a look back at the 90s or the early 2000s, we're going to talk about, everyone's talking about The Matrix. We're going to be talking about The Matrix Resurrections. And, you know, while I think it's very, it's thinking about reboots and remakes and stuff. So we're going to be talking about the first episode of Picard, but I guess we're just going to probably relate that to the Picard series as a whole.
Not giving my review of The Matrix just yet, because I guess we'll do that on our next show, but taking a property where I think you could make a good argument for, like, why did we go back to this at all? Didn't we get it all in the first time? Didn't we say it well? And also looking at Picard, revisiting a character that pretty definitively had a good ending, a good epilogue, but yet going back to the well one more time.
Yeah, and so there'll be plenty to mine from that for sure.
So we'll be talking about that the next time that you hear from Backtrekking. But that's it for now. Thanks for listening. And if you like the show, tell a friend, follow us at Backtrekking on Twitter, and tell us also what you think we should look at in future episodes. You know, we're in the process of coming up with a whole new plan for 2022 and the things that we'll be covering. So we are looking for suggestions from the listeners. If there's something that you would like us to talk about on this show, if you see a connection between one of your favorite episodes of Trek and something else that you've experienced, be it in media or in real life, let us know about that so we can get it on the schedule. Gooey, tell the people where they can find you online.
I'm on Twitter. I'm at GUIFame.
And I'm at KA1IBAN on Twitter. And you can find all of the shows on the Just Enough Trope Network at Just Enough Trope on Twitter. And that is it for us for 2021. We will see you soon. And until then, keep on trekking.